Good Monday morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Getting to Know Our Heavenly Family. It's Monday morning, that means it's time for another episode. Apologies in advance, I'm a little stuffed up. My allergies have been absolutely killing me, so if my voice sounds a little off, that's why. But we're here, we're rocking with it, and we're rolling. Today, I am very excited to bring this saint to you. Today we're talking about Saint John Francis Regis. Cool last name. No relation. So, Saint John Francis Regis was actually French, so he probably wouldn't have pronounced it Regis. He probably would have said Regis. But you know what? We'll just say Regis because I'm doing it today and we figure that might be a cool idea, right? So, Saint John Francis Regis lived in the 17th century in France. And he, from a very young age, was educated by the Jesuits, had a Jesuit education, and enjoyed it so much and was so inspired by the Jesuit priests that he decided to join the order himself at the tender age of 18. Now, he had this reputation when he entered the seminary of being an extremely rigorous student, worked himself to the bone, and then didn't take a lot of, rest and relaxation time. He would spend hours and hours in the chapel in the evenings, to the point where his fellow seminarians actually worried about his health. They said, man, you gotta, you're not sleeping, you're not, spending time just reading a book, chillaxing, nothing. But he was able to make it through. He survived, he was okay, through the grace of God, and eventually did become ordained to the priesthood as a Jesuit priest. Now, his early priesthood was spent, kind of making a name for himself. There was this tradition, or rather this trend during the time when St. John Francis Regis was alive, where a lot of homilies were very poetic, a lot of flowery language, just these very kind of grandiose, complicated verbal structures with a lot of almost lyricism to them. He was not like that at all. He preached very plain sermons, very to the point, very accessible for the poor and the common folk, which was pretty rare for the time. That really stood out. He would often spend his mornings at the altar saying Mass and then hearing confessions, and then in the evenings and the afternoons, he would go and visit hospitals and prisons. So, again, kind of keeping with that rigorous structure and schedule that he had even back in the seminary, not really giving himself much of a break. So the Bishop of Viviers, which is one of the dioceses in France, took note of Father Regis's, the way that he kind of interacted with the poor and the common folk. And so he asked him to come to his diocese and spend some time spreading the faith to some areas where it had lapsed a little bit. This was, again, during a period where the clergy weren't necessarily serving the people of this particular diocese all that well. There were a lot of lapsed Catholics, there were a lot of people who had converted to various Protestant denominations, and there was just a general attitude of apathy towards religion. In many ways, it sometimes feels a little bit like the northeastern United States, with kind of that apathy towards religion, specifically Catholicism. So St. John Francis Regis is sent out by the Bishop of Viviers to go spread the faith, kind of rekindle that fire for Christ, and he does an incredible job. For years, he kind of travels throughout the diocese, holding missions, starting little Catholic communities, and really kind of rejuvenates the faith in that diocese. Now, he really had a dream where he would go to Canada and minister to the indigenous peoples there. That was kind of his goal, but he never got to do that. He was actually then, after his work in Viviers, sent to a remote area of France, very mountainous region, where the faith had almost never been brought. People had been without the sacraments for decades. And so he went to this incredibly remote region and did a lot of what he did in Viviers, spreading the faith to people who, either had it and then lapsed or had never even been introduced to the faith in the first place. And he garnered such a reputation while he was undertaking this work that he became referred to as the saint by the people that he was ministering to. Oh, the saint is coming to say Mass today. Oh, the saint is preaching over there. So, he was pre-canonized by his own people before he even passed away. Obviously, they, knew what was going on because we're talking about him here today as a member of our heavenly family. So they might have had, a little inside insight into what was going to happen. He lived out the last years of his life ministering in this remote region of France. And then I want to make sure I get the quote exactly right, so I'm going to just pull it up here. Yes, so on December 31st of the last year of his life, New Year's Eve, John Francis Regis woke up and he kind of felt himself coming to the end of his life. He felt his health failing, and so he spent the entire day in front of the crucifix, just repeating, Lord, have mercy on me, Lord, have mercy on me, Lord, have mercy on those around me. Praying profusely, almost a lot like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. His last words were, into thy hands I commend my spirit. So again, very holy man, remembering to the end of his life what is the most important and what, where he wants to go. So Saint John Francis Regis did pass away. He was canonized not long afterwards in 1737. So he's been a saint for a number of centuries at this point. So he's much more than just a cool name. He was an advocate for the poor and the disenfranchised, brought the faith to a lot of people who didn't have it or had had it and lost it, and a great role model for us today as we, attempt to bring the faith to those around us. People who maybe lapsed Catholics, maybe people who are of other faiths who, have never been introduced to someone who lives the Catholic faith truly and boldly. And that's what we're called to do. So we can look to Saint John Francis Regis as a great example. We thank you guys for joining us this morning for another episode of Getting to Know Our Heavenly Family. We'll meet you right back here next week, Monday, 10 a.m. for the next episode in this series. Thank you guys so much for watching, and may God bless you all.